Hi, this is Robert with Cruzbike, and today we're going to be assembling the new 2021 Cruzbike S40. Once you have your Cruzbike in hand, you'll want to unpack it from the box. The main part will lift right out. Also included in the package, you'll have your seat and seat extension. You'll have your headrest. You'll also have your Cruzbike toolkit and any other accessories you may have ordered with the bike. You also find a parts box. And inside the parts box you will find other small parts, including your pedals, a mirror, miscellaneous hardware including the back seat bracket, seat cushion, and Velcro will also be included in the box. We have everything ready to go. We're going to undo the wheels and then unpack the packing material from the frame, so we have everything ready to go as you see right here. Now when you unpack the wheels, you're going to want to use caution to not lose track of the end caps. So make sure when you unpack everything around the wheels that you do not lose the end caps. These should be secure on the hub, but it is possible that these caps can come loose in the packaging or in the box, so make sure that you have the end cap on the axle. Otherwise your wheel will not fit correctly into the through axle dropout. And make sure you check the same thing for the front wheel. Now to get ready for assembly, I highly recommend having a small tub of bicycle grease on hand. Vaseline works in a pinch. We're going to have our seat yoke here and our through axles. Now we want to make sure we keep our through axles nice and clean. Here we have our through axle for the drive wheel. Now note that inside the end of the through axle is the through axle tool. It simply pulls out, and on the end of it is a 6mm Allen to tighten and loosen your through axle. The tool also has a Torx bit at the end, which is used to tighten your rotors on your hub for the disc brakes. It stores right there in the axle. Nice and handy. Also included in the box is a spare derailleur hanger, which you have here. You'll want to keep that in your spare parts bin. The main derailleur hanger is already installed onto the derailleur, which you'll see when we get to that assembly point. Also we have the pivot bolt clamp and 3 washers. You'll want to make sure when you do the installation that 2 washers are on the sleeve side and 1 washer is on the bolt side. Also included is a pulley and a small bushing and nut. This is for a front derailleur install. In this case we have a 1x system, so you'll want to put that in your spare parts bin. Alright, so we're ready to get started. One of the first things we're going to do is remove the dropout protector from the front forks. You can either throw this out or keep it in your spare parts. Now the first thing we're going to do is install our derailleur onto the chainstay. Here we have the hangers already installed onto the derailleur. I find it easiest to do this by first installing the pivot clamp and boom and slider assembly onto the pivot clamp using the sleeve bolt. This will be much easier if you grease this connection a little bit. Make sure there's 2 washers before you insert the sleeve bolt, and then the 3rd washer goes on the other side. We're going to use our 5mm Allen to tighten this connection just a little bit to keep it from coming apart or being too loose. Now we're going to take our whole front end and we're going to lay it on its side very carefully. Now located in your hardware bag you will find a small screw small panhead screw. It's a 2.5 millimeter. And what we're going to do is we're going to line up the derailleur hanger, and we're going to attach it using this small screw. You want to be very careful to not strip the head of the screw out or the threads. We want to very carefully make this connection. Once our screw is threaded into the chainstay, we're going to tighten it down just enough that everything's nice and snug and flush, but not over tighten it because we don't want to strip out the head of the screw. Now I've immobilized the front wheel with our feedback stand to make things a little easier. I'm going to take our drive wheel, the long through axle. I'm going to grease these threads a little bit. I highly recommend this. It will make installation much easier. I'm also going to put just a little very thin coat on the axle itself. And then I'm going to set that aside so it stays nice and clean. Once we have that in place and ready to go, we're going to very carefully pick up our front end. Note I'm holding it by the pivot clamp. And we're going to very carefully set the front fork right over the hub. We're going to make sure that our disc brake caliper is aligned with the rotor. Once everything nice and straight, we will set the fork right down onto the hub. Now remember, we did not overly tighten the pivot clamp, so our front end can pivot back and forth. We want to make sure that our front end is nice and aligned with the axle hole. So when we insert our through axle, it goes in nice and smoothly and will thread into the opposite side of the chainstay. So we're going to make sure that we thread that in very carefully. We do not want to cross thread this part. And if everything is relatively loose and straight, it should thread in very easily. Then we will use our 6 millimeter through axle wrench, where we can tighten that through axle down. Now normally you want to make sure that this is nice and snug. It only has to be hand tight as you can get it with the tool, so you don't want to leverage it too much with a larger wrench. But for right now, since we're doing assembly, we're going to loosen it a little bit. And then once you are finished with the tool, it stows right in the axle. Here we're going to loosen up our axle just a little bit for the next step. We want the front end to be able to move back and forth. Let's talk really quick about our chainstay clamps. We always want to make sure these are tightened evenly so there's a gap on both sides of the clamp. For now, we're going to loosen them up a little bit just so we have free movement of our front end. Let's install the rear wheel. We're going to take our rear through axle, again add a little bit of grease to the threads and to the shaft. Here we have a 6 millimeter out of our Cruzbike toolkit. Just want to use this to show you that absent of the tool that's included with your main through axle, you can also use a 6 millimeter Allen. And here we'll simply rotate the frame up and we'll add our rear wheel, making sure we line up the rotors between the disc pads. Once our wheel's in place, we will be able to insert the through axle and tighten it down. Now that we have our rear wheel installed, we are ready to install our headrest tubes. For this, we're going to take a 3 millimeter Allen from our Cruzbike toolkit. And we're going to loosen the Perez clamp. So we simply loosen the bolt and it will lower the clamp, as you can see here, all the way down to the bottom of the hydroform tube. That will allow us to slide the headrest tubes into the main frame past the Perez clamp. And once we have that in, we will tighten these bolts, and they only need to be hand tightened. They don't need to be tightened any more than that. And those will pull up and push against the headrest tubes against the frame so it stays put. Now that we have our headrest tubes installed, we can install our seat. So here we have the seat back yoke, which is used to install the top of the seat. We also have our seat hardware and our main portion of the seat and the front section of the seat. Now the first step is to line the mounting holes up with the tabs at the lower end of the seat. Then we're going to take a button head bolt and our larger fender washers to install the front seat lip. Now I like to install this so it's about 2/3 or so of the way forward. The front seat extension is designed to move back and forth depending on your comfort level, and then once we have it about 2/3 of the way forward to start, we'll use our M5 nylock nuts to snug it down. Now again, on these bolts we don't necessarily want to over tighten them, but we want to tighten them enough so that we don't have a whole bunch of movement with that front seat extension. Now for the upper portion of the seat, we're going to use these 2 holes here and our seat mounting bracket, the seat back yoke, and we're going to use our other button head M5 bolts to compress the seat back a little bit and thread those bolts into the threaded portion of the yoke, and it will hold the top of the seat. Now we still have access to our Perez clamp through the holes in the seat, so we can loosen those and make our headrest adjustments in or out as needed, and then tighten that Perez clamp down to lock the headrest in place. Now one of the nice things about the S40 is the derailleur is preset from the factory. But before we install our chain, we want to make sure that it's shifted all the way to the smallest cog, and we want to double check that the jockey wheels are aligned. So if it looks like this, just do a double tap on the shifter to shift it all the way down, and give a good look to make sure that the jockey wheels are aligned. Everything should be nice and set from the factory. So now let's install the chain. So we're going to take our quick links and have them at the ready, and we're going to take our derailleur and we're going to lock it open. The cage will lock open. This will make installing the chain much easier. Now, unlike in previous years, I'm going to do a new way to install the chain. We're going to take the chain and we're going to drape it down on the other side of the cassette and around the chain wheel. Now note, it's a narrow, wide chain ring, which means the chain only fits across the teeth one way. And here we're going to take our chain, we're going to go around the cassette, we're going to bring it up over the top jockey wheel, and then we're going to drop it down. Make sure we miss the small guard that's on the cage, and once we go over the top jockey wheel, we're going to go under the lower one. And note again, these jockey wheels have a narrow, wide design to their teeth, so the chain only fits one way. Now we're going to simply pull the chain through, and go around the top of the chain, over the chain ring. And we're going to install our quick link. On either side of the chain, just like this. Now if you can pull this tight, that's great, but sometimes they don't pull tight. So what we're going to do is align it at the very top, holding it with our hand so it doesn't come undone. We're going to release the cage, and then now that we have this on top, we're going to simply put a little forward pressure and lock that link into place just like that. Alright, now let's do some pedal installation. So we have our pedal washers. We're going to install those over the pedals. Note that each one has a small right or left, or an R and an L stamped on the inside. We're going to find the correct sides. The right side is the right drive side of the bike. So the side with the chain ring is the right pedal. Now both pedals will have to be installed by back pedaling. So that's how we know we got the right one. So if we take the right pedal and we just kind of gently back pedal, it will thread right onto the crank. Same thing with the left pedal. Back pedal and thread it on. And these particular pedals have a Allen wrench insert, and we will use our Allen tool from our Cruzbike toolkit to tighten those pedals down. And again, on this one, we'll want to use pretty good hand pressure to make sure the pedals are nice and secure. Alright, now we're going to install our seat cushion. We have the pre-sewn on Velcro and Velcro strips included in your package. I like to simply add the Velcro to the underside of the pad, like this. And then we'll want to take off the backing and very carefully position our seat cushion onto the seat and stick that Velcro right to the carbon fiber seat. Give a little bit of pressure, make sure everything is nice and stuck to the seat. And then we'll install our headrest cushion. It fits right over the top. Then we have our Velcro straps. And once your headrest pad is on, your bike is basically complete. I encourage you to watch the S40 fit video to get a good fit. You will definitely want to watch that before tightening down your boom clamp, pivot clamp, and chainstay clamps before you're ready for your first ride. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at support@cruzbike.com. Thank you so much for watching, and happy riding.